Hi and welcome. This is Risk and Compliance in Times of Crisis. The webinar will begin in a few minutes. We're going to give a couple of moments for people to join. Once again, welcome. This is MentorCore's Founders Chat, Risk and Compliance in Times of Crisis. My name is Dan Ayala, and with me is Lisa Beth Lentini Walker, and we are the co-founders of MentorCore. Excuse me. We'll get started in about one more minute, but in the meantime, if there are questions along the way, there is a Q&A panel. If you're watching this live, there is a Q&A panel in the video session. Please ask questions as we go. We'll attempt to answer them along the way. If we don't get to them through the course of this session, we'll be happy to get those answers back to you afterward. But please feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll keep an eye on them and answer them whenever it fits into the conversation. Or at the end, we do have some time allocated specifically for questions and answers. And welcome. We'll get started in one more minute. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is a really, really exciting day for us as we kick off MentorCore with our first Founders Chat. I'm Dan Ayala, and this is Lisa Beth Lentini Walker, and we have a few topics to seed the discussion, but we also really want to hear from you. Please use the Q&A panel on Zoom to ask your questions, and we'll try to answer them as we go. So let's get started. Lisa, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm thrilled to be here today. I wanted to express my excitement about MentorCore because Dan, you and I have been working on this for quite some time because of all of the conversations we've had. So a little bit about me. I come at my work from a JD, MBA, LLM background, so heavy law background. I also teach law school at Mitchell Hamlin. And I work with the executive JD program there, which is largely remote. So I've been doing remote teaching for quite some time. I am certified in compliance and ethics, as well as corporate governance. And recently I received a certification in health and wellness coaching because of my strong convictions about what we need to do from a well-being perspective for the compliance, ethics, and corporate governance community. So that's a little bit about me. Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so my name is Dan Ayala. I have about 25 years in information security. I started back in the early days with networking and some of the early firewalls and protection of the perimeter, and have grown my career almost entirely within the security space and watching the field grow along, as I've matured my career. But one of the things, and I've been in fields including pharmaceuticals, healthcare. Higher ed, technology, financial services, and more. And one of the things that's been most interesting to me over the years has been the ability to help colleagues, help people within my organization and without, grow their careers and figure out how best to make the steps necessary to get them to where they want to be in their career and in their life. I currently have a company called MentorCore, a company called Socratic. Socratic is it's a virtual CISO and virtual privacy officer consultancy focused on small and medium businesses, helping them to with the same risks that large enterprises have, but potentially have much higher impacts if they're not realized. And this has been a topic that Lisa Beth and I have been talking about for quite some time. I think it started when Lisa Beth, when you had me out to Minneapolis to speak at a compliance conference, and in that day and us talking afterward, we realized how closely related the compliance and ethics fields are with security and privacy, and what the security and privacy people also call compliance. There's they're not just aligned, but there's a good amount of overlap and complementary services, complementary things that we do together. And in talking about it, we realized how much there was that we could learn from each other, from each other's spaces. And over the course of the next year, it's been a year and 2 months now since we had that talk, that we've mentored each other in our own spaces, and realized that that there was a lot of demand for this outside of just the two of us. Because I don't know about you, Lisa Beth, every time I have a conversation with folks in the security space, the topic almost inevitably turns to, how can I either enter the field? How can I grow in the field? How can I make the transition from practitioner to leader in the field, and more?
Absolutely. And I was so thrilled when you came out to Minneapolis. For any, probably most people don't know, but Dan and I have known each other for quite some time, since we were actually really young teenagers growing up. And it's been fascinating, watching each other as we navigate different parts of our life and different parts of our career. So I know, Dan, you've been working in your professional space for well over two decades. I have been as well, just slightly different spaces. But one of the things that we're starting to see is there's a lot of convergence, and there's really a need to collaborate in new and different ways and learn different skills as we go. And you and I were lucky in that we've known each other for such a long time, but that due to a variety of transitions that we had gone through in our lives, we were often having somewhat mirroring experiences, whether it was going into a really large corporate environment and navigating, a Fortune 100 business, or it was starting out your own consulting practice, which, as luck would have it, we both were more or less on the same time frame for. So we saw a lot of really amazing opportunities to learn from each other, but also to create an environment where that can be brought to more than just the two of us. And I know I personally had a lot of challenges with finding really good mentors and finding really good groups of people that would engage in a process that would hold me accountable to my own learning, growth, and development. So I think there's a lot of benefits to be had from finding that right group that will help you grow and develop and mentor you and be in the same type of headspace that you are, but also bring in different perspectives. I'm having a hard time.
It would look like I didn't unmute. Um, technical difficulties. I was gonna say it's really interesting, and I think I'd like to dive into one of the things you said a little bit around finding mentors outside your organization versus inside your organization. I think there's some pros and cons to doing to having people close to your own organization. But there's definitely also benefit to talking to other people in industry, but not in your own organization. You want to start on that? And then I have some thoughts as well.
Oh, for sure. So I've been really lucky. I've had some mentors within the organizations that I worked for who were great. Now, one of the caveats is there are not a lot of places that actually invest in mentoring, and a lot of it is so informal that really you need to drive what's going to happen and seek it out for yourself rather than being assigned someone. Some companies are much better at this than others, but there are a huge variety of companies out there, and sometimes there just isn't a focus on development within your organization. So having a mentor inside your organization, if it's available and you can find the right person who's going to bring a different viewpoint and approach a mentoring relationship in a way that is beneficial to you, is fantastic. You both understand who's in the organization, that person can help you navigate the organization. But oftentimes, one of the challenges is that they may not be as adept in your subject matter space for you to be able to get anything from a professional standpoint other than some of those connections and how to navigate an organization.
But can you get over one of the concerns I have about inside the organization, and I've been really lucky in that I have had very good individuals who have helped me within organizations and outside. But within an organization, there's always the chance that the needs of the enterprise, the needs of the organization will trump the genuineness of the advice that you get from that person, because there's a vested interest in that person. And I'm certainly not saying that all mentors take those things over giving genuine advice in the interest of the mentee, but there's some pitfalls in having somebody within the organization versus going outside to get an outside perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, within the organization, you're all drinking the same Kool-Aid, so you do have a somewhat you kind of have blinders on to what's going on outside the organization. And there may not be the same perspectives that you would get from somebody who's totally independent and not navigating the same potential political pitfalls, etc. So
I like
do
to
think
take a blend of the two, though.
I think it's a really good idea to have a blend of the two. I totally agree. Having someone who's able to help you navigate really tricky situations within an organization is fantastic, but also being able to benchmark with others who are dealing with similar situations within your professional space and can help you identify trends that might not become as apparent just within within the silo of your organization. I think those are all really important. And I see that there's a question from someone in the chat room asking about the best ways and options to identify a mentor outside of your organization that's an SME in your industry, or in an industry that you want to pivot to, and not, if you're not entry level. And that's actually a great question. And it's one of the reasons why we thought MentorCore was so important. We believe, and I'm going to talk for you now too, Dan.
That's right.
We believe that it's sometimes really difficult to identify people who would be good mentors, who are not entry level, and who want to see people grow and develop within your industry. Some people are very fortunate and they have fantastic budgets to be able to attend lots of events, and they have a personality that just naturally attracts lots of people, but that's not everyone. And what we're seeing and trying to do is bring together really wickedly smart people who want to give back to the profession and grow and develop themselves and others as part of what MentorCore is doing. I don't know what
Yeah.
you have to say about that, Dan.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I think there's also the opportunity to work within local networks. Never has it been more important to have to use existing relationships and the people they know. If you go back to some of the origins of LinkedIn, before it became a more marketing tool, it really was about, hey, Lisa Beth, I see you know Jim in this field. Can
And
you
I want to
introduce
know
me?
Jim.
Can you introduce me? And I think that that still exists today, but it exists on a more localized level, either across a number of filter bubbles. And the term has taken on a negative connotation, but I think it's really pertinent here because we all have filter bubbles within our organization. We have filter bubbles within our fields, and then we have filter bubbles within our localities. And where these all meet is that sort of nexus of these are all areas we need to look at, but that nexus is where you can look to find those people. I'm a big fan of joining informal communication networks in your locality for the field you're looking to pivot into, whether it's national or localized, but somehow start to build relationships. Find out who you know that's in those areas and ask them to help you bridge in. Ask them to help mentor you into the field. The same exists for people mentoring them into the security, risk, compliance, and ethics world. That's what we have been doing for decades. And we can all do that to help within our own fields as well as others. But staying in touch and staying in contact with people is more important now than ever.
Well, and I also think, right, some of this is you get what you give, right? So if you are setting out to find yourself a mentor, one of the first questions I always ask is, what are you doing to mentor others? And absolutely everyone has something, right? If you are new to the field, you may, and a recent graduate, maybe you're aware of some technologies that somebody who has been in the field for a while hasn't thought of use cases for in the profession. Maybe you have a perspective as a new entrant to the profession that can help someone who's managing other new entrants into the profession be better at their job, right? So absolutely everyone has something to give. And I think that mentoring is one of the greatest gifts, but it's absolutely a two-way street. A mentoring relationship isn't just all, the person who has been in the field 20, 30 years is the one who tells you what to do. That's not mentoring. That's not coaching. That's not development. That's just somebody telling you what to do. So
more like managing.
Well, yeah, and bad managing at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that part of this is when you really want to have a mentoring relationship, you need to also be willing to talk about what you can add to the relationship. So make sure that you're out there and that you're making people aware that this is something you're interested in.
Yeah, and I think also thinking about not just the field you want to pivot into, you want to move into, but also people with broader views outside, the business mindset. We talk a lot about it. So I come from the security side, and we talk about the fact that the CISO has finally arrived at the table with the other C-level executives to be able to start to have a conversation. But in doing so, we need to be able to speak the language of the business around us. So the more time we spend understanding the world of capital B business, the better we can do our jobs. And I think we're starting to filter that same message throughout the organization at all levels. So engaging with people outside of the field at different levels or in completely different verticals to get perspectives on how business happens, how technology happens, how various topics happen. And having an array of those kind of relationships will also help give you perspective both about what you like to do, where you want to go. Does it make sense? Does this all does this all, is this really what you want to be doing?
So there's another question, which I think we should answer right now, about what's a good way to figure out what you can bring to a mentee if you're new in the industry. And I would say, first of all, you should know what skills you have and what expertise you have. Like, one of the first things that I think is really important to do is go through a skills inventory. What have you learned? What are you really good at? Are you really good at listening? Are you really good at talking to people? Are you really good at managing difficult conversations? Write all these things down. Are you really great at Instagram or other forms of social media? When you figure out what you're really good at, then you can be able to talk about what you could bring to a relationship. And what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm actually going to take it even a little different spin on it, which
Oh.
is that, what's that?
Those are great perspectives, right? This is part
Yeah.
of the reason that mentoring is magic,
Yeah.
right? Because we do bring different perspectives.
So here's what I love when people are new to an industry is, if especially if it's an industry I've been in, is I want to know what the perspective is of people coming into the industry. Again, I'll come back to security. I hear time and time and time again from people that say, I want to get into security. I want to understand how to get in, but managers are posting job descriptions that are unrealistic for entry level. I want to know about that experience.
Right.
So you're teaching you're teaching others through your own experience. So it's beyond just beyond skills. That's important, but it's also the experience you have that can help pave the way smoother for others that are going down the same path, especially when we're in a field where I think there is a disjoint between expectations and realities. And that experience helps me do my job better. And it helps us all have better expectations of what reality looks like, especially when you're new into the industry. So I'm taking that particular question. Those are the first questions I'd ask. Tell me what you've stumbled on. Tell me what you have, what's caught you up and how we can do it better. And then, we can turn it around and say, and here are some things that I can help you with around getting into the industry or getting over the hurdles that I heard you just describe.
Right, absolutely. And oftentimes in new industries, there are tons of acronyms, right? CISOs and chief compliance officers and chief ethics officers are very adept at developing new acronyms that no one knows how to deal with. And then you compound them with the business itself, which often has its own acronyms, sometimes which are the same as the ones that we're using for other parts of our profession. I know that one group I was working with actually had like a huge list. It was multiple pages long of all the acronyms so that people could navigate them. These are things that, as you're entering an industry, there are people who spend time putting this data together, and it's really good to be able to navigate that and also to talk about what is difficult when you come in. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today also is what we're doing with MentorCore in terms of why we think there's a value there. And we've talked about relationships, community, lifelong learning, and mentoring, as well as leadership development as part of why we're putting this together. What else did you want to talk about, Dan?
I think that one of the interesting things about these fields is, I guess, the commonalities is that as much as we are inwardly focused, we spend a lot of our time heads down, focused on regulations, on policies, on best practices, and it's often solo work, or very small teamwork, or small cohort based. But one of the things that's also common is we spend a lot of time sharing information across the industry, information about new risks and threats and approaches to compliance, or how to make better awareness around ethical obligations inside organizations. And we do a really good job of that. So while we're inwardly focused, we're also really good at sharing. So what if we could take and share do more about sharing, but at the growth and personal development and paths to leadership and other other career growth discussions. So having a community, this is one of the things that drove us to think about having a community for people to come to talk about not just the topics of how to secure, how to be compliant, how to manage ethics inside the organization, but also how to best use these to help your own organizations, but also how to use them to help grow your career, how to grow yourself as both a person and as a member of the organization.
I would absolutely agree with that. And, all of the professions, the risk professions, I call them the guardians because they're the ones that are guarding the pool, making sure that you're not drowning. And then whenever somebody's doing something wrong, you have to go in and save them. But they're very isolating. And you're right. A lot of it is heads down. Let's just get through it. Let's make sure that we've done the right things. And between the isolation that's experienced in this profession and a lot of organizations, especially the small to medium businesses that you and I both work with quite a bit, Dan, there's not any extra time, funding, et cetera, to focus in on development and what that means in this profession and connecting others and how we can all be stronger together. So part of this was all not just giving back to the profession but also inspiring others to do the same while keeping that business mindset so that we're staying current and relevant.
Yeah, and especially now, and people are extra focused right now in a time of crisis, and I think this sort of brings us around to the topic, to some of the main discussion topic, which is around in this period of crisis. We're seeing what kind of things are we seeing as good teaching moments and leadership opportunities as we help our organizations through this really massive change. Either from we're seeing people move more remote work. We're seeing the force of digital transformation. We're seeing the change of mindset, just in general in our organizations as a result of it. What moments how can we bring leadership in our fields, through our fields, to our organizations?
Well, great question. First of all, I firmly believe that when you're in the middle of a crisis, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. So being really self-aware, and like I said, this is a very isolating profession to begin with. So there were already challenges there from a mental health and emotional wellness perspective. But being self-aware, I think, is the very first gating item, because you cannot help other people as a leader in any way if you are flailing about and unable to help yourself. So that's the starting point. But I also think,
what form does that take? Is that get out of the office and take days off and rest? Is it is it keep calm and
keep calm and compliance
on? Those are two of the things that come to mind, is just trying to keep a level head and make sure you find your way out of the virtual, the office as it is now. What else can you think of?
It's all of these things, right? So when you look at a human being, total wellness is more than just, did you go out and run today? Did you eat? And did you sleep? Those are three critical things right there, and all hard to manage when you're not in a routine, right? Because our brains are wired to really, really crave routine. We like that automation that the brain does. It uses less energy when you are doing something routine. That's why, you can be driving and then suddenly not realize that you're almost home because you've been on this autopilot, right? Autopilot is really healthy. And we are missing a lot of autopilot right now because we're learning all new skills with the change to working remotely and zooming everything and everything like that. So we need downtime. We absolutely need downtime. And that means real rest, not I'm going to Netflix, because you're still doing something when you're Netflixing. It means really taking that, pulling away from being in the middle of what the kind of toxic media stream, which is telling you, all these terrible things that you cannot do anything about, and bringing yourself back to, I can control my attitude, I can control my actions, and my actions can be things that are beneficial to me, because by being taking care of yourself, you are actually working in service of others.
And being an example for those around you of how to begin to take this lifestyle on for themselves. Because I know that organizations, it's not always easy to walk that talk. But if you have others around you doing it, or if you can be the example, perhaps you can help influence others to be more positive on it as well.
Absolutely. Some of the most toxic environments I've seen and experienced are ones where the leaders, CEOs of companies, uh, won't take the time to care for themselves, because then
Yeah.
they export and syndicate that misery onto others. So part of this is, how do you find a way to be resilient in the midst of crisis? Because if you don't do that, then you can't see. You have blinders on because you're literally trying to make sure that you're safe, right? Because
Right.
you're under threat. And you have blinders on to all the other options and innovation that's possible. So the companies that I see right now, and the programs that I see right now that are doing the best, are the ones that are able to calm themselves and get to a point where they can see options for innovation. And there's lots of it going on right now.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think we're also, all of this innovation, a lot of it's happening um, a little more, how do I put this right correctly, or in the right level? Happenstance is a little too nice. Off the cuff, uh, seat of the pants. And
Makes
as a
it hard
result,
for people in our
people,
profession.
exactly. Exactly. And so, I guess one of the things that's also been really interesting in this is watching security leaders, privacy leaders, compliance and ethics leaders use more of the soft skills around awareness and communication to get messages across, rather than hard action or thou shalt not decrees.
Yeah.
And this is the time when I think people are most, they're both most willing to collaborate, but at the same time also want to see outcomes, because there's definite steps that need to happen. So we need to be, this is a time to work on things like education and awareness, but in delicate fashion, and honing communication skills to get the message across both succinctly and effectively, but bring people along. Things like, that come with organizational change management, where you bring people along on the ride, so that they want to become part of the compliance, or of the security mindset that goes along with it.
Yeah, and I think, to me, there are a couple of key things here. Number one, you have to be human, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's having a hard time. If you pretend like you're not, nobody's going to believe you, and you lose credibility. So this is a time to build trust by being empathetic, communicating really clearly, but with compassion.
And I
And
think being vulnerable in some cases too, not in the,
100%.
I'm going to the unpatched vulnerability, but in the hey, this is affecting me the same as it's affecting you and everybody else. It really does help to build a broad, a level playing field, so we can all communicate and relate.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's being affected. I like to say that we're all in the same storm together. We just have different boats. Some of us, right? Some of us have moved to remote world and are just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I never want this to end. And there are others who are like, this is really hard, and I'm not getting my fix of connecting with people, and I'm feeling really out of my element, and I'm
Yeah.
not doing as well. So, I mean, I think acknowledging that for some people, this has been the best thing ever. And for others, this has been traumatizing, both personally and professionally, perhaps. I also think that this is the time for collaboration and to be a builder of bridges, right? If you want to be part of the dialogue, you need to be part of the solution, and you need to be adding something. So being really useful, um, and helping to create those connections. So those, a lot of, what people term as soft skills are becoming more and more critical
Yeah.
to being relevant.
Yeah, I keep coming back to something my father said, because who doesn't quote their father? My father came up with this. No one else is. Everyone else is copying my father. But it's make yourself indispensable. This is the time to be able to demonstrate. We all have a part of making a success, but bringing our expertise to organizations now is an opportunity to show the role and the benefit of the fields we come from, which aren't always appreciated immediately or upfront within the larger context of business. If we do our jobs right, nothing ever happens, right? If we do our jobs right, there's no material visible output.
Right. Right. And you're right. Your dad's brilliant. We already knew that. Um, but yes, being indispensable is not the what you do. It's the how you do it.
How you do it. Yeah.
Right. Lots of people can make the things happen, and check the boxes, but it's how you lead, particularly during times of crisis, that really makes a huge difference. And then I also think that one of the big jobs for a leader right now is to be a visionary, to talk about, right? Things aren't going to be the same, but here's how they're going to be potentially better for you. And here's what the future can hold. There's a lot of promise there.
Right. And an opportunity to change the perspective on leaders, whereas leaders have often, or sorry, organizational leaders often are seen as scripted, as on message, and there's something to be said for being on message, but at the same time, there's increasing desire by teams to have transparency, to have honesty, to have as much information, not waiting for all the information to be together, but to be informed along the way with the best information that you have at the moment. And those are some traits that I see for leaders in these times of crisis, especially in times of crisis. What else would you add to that?
I would just say, I think more than anything, right now, there really needs to be focus and attention to well-being of everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's you, it's your team. Like, if you're on a team and you're not asking people how they really are,
Yeah.
or asking, one of the things that I heard, which I think is a better question than how are you, is what's one word that you'd use to describe yourself right now, or describe the week, or describe how you feel about your job? Because then they have to come up with something that describes it rather than just saying good or fine or whatever. It really helps to get an idea of mindset.
And
And,
reach beyond your team too.
and reach beyond your team. It should be everyone that you care about, right?
Yeah.
Is there a small business that you haven't reached out to? Is there a vendor that you typically work with and you haven't chatted with them in a while? Everyone's, kind of a little bit off from, either because they're so swamped with work or things have dried up so much.
Yeah.
So reaching out to people proactively is really what a leader does, right?
Yeah.
And leaders can be in any seat in an organization. They can be in any stage of their career, right? A leader is what you do. It's how you are. And whether you have a team or not doesn't matter. Whether you're in a corporation or not doesn't matter. Leaders lead by example, and they lead by helping others see potential that maybe those other people didn't know existed, and by deploying a lot of compassion. So I think that these are all things that you can do right now. You can make a list. Like, I've come up with at least one person every day that I'm reaching out to, just to see, how are things going? How can I help you? What's on your mind today? Here's a resource that you might not have been aware of. Here's something that's going on in our community. These are things that everyone can deploy immediately.
Right. Yeah, and the level of endorphin that comes, the level of pleasure that comes from doing that is equally matched by people receiving it. And it's not about what you get out of the conversation. It's about the ability and having people know that there are people that care about them and care about their well-being and their outcome. This extends to friends. It's been great the last few weeks. The silver lining in all this is I've heard from friends and I've contacted friends that I haven't talked to in 4, 5, 6 years, just to find out how things are going. You take a step back and you realize that there's more to it than just being heads down every day all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, one of the things that I think you see in any crisis, and in this one, it happens to be far more widespread, is that it brings out both the best and the worst in people.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that I'm always asking myself day in and day out is, what do you want to say you were during this time? When you look back on it, who were you in the midst of all of this? And is it somebody that you're going to be proud of? And so I put it on a little post-it and I remind myself of that every single day, because we all have choices to make about our attitude and our actions. And there's so much that we can't control, but there is plenty that we can control that really can put some good into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess all of this then leads into these are all the things that we've talked about over time, and it sort of led into MentorCore becoming what it is. So, what is MentorCore and what makes it different? He said, asking a question he knows the answer to, but wants others to hear as well.
um, so MentorCore, we've talked about a little bit. It's really the place to go when you're in compliance and risk and you want to connect with other people. We're building a community, and what makes it different is it's a place where you can really belong with other people who understand you and are facing some of the same challenges. Um, it's bringing together diverse perspectives with similar but not the same backgrounds. And it's a way to extend your network and be able to develop yourself and then be held accountable by others that you trust and are relying on. So I think it really is a multifaceted solution that we are trying to make available for the compliance and risk community to build something that is of benefit to everyone.
Yeah. And I think one of the other interesting parts that came out as we were doing this was, if I go back probably 10 years now, I had a person that worked on my team who approached me and said, "Hey, Dan, you are quite extroverted. You are, you're a very large E. And I often find that I have trouble communicating or getting my message across in larger scale meetings. Can you help me figure out how better to do that?" And then she pointed me to a book. It's Quiet by Susan Kerr. Is it? Yeah, it's about the power of introverts. And so one of the this is less about the book reference, although I highly recommend watching her TED Talk and reading the book, but more about the fact that one of the things we see for this is because it starts with a text-based community, a forum, that it allows a place for introverts to have their voice heard in a way that is meaningful to them, and they can prepare people that have trouble communicating in large vocal meetings or in active chat threads, can craft their message, can post it, and can make their voices heard in a way that's meaningful to them and others. Because the one thing I've found is that people on my teams that have been introverted, when they speak, they say some of the wisest things, but have struggled with finding a way to do that, with finding the vehicle to make that happen. So that's one of the things we really want to encourage in this is giving a place for introverts to have their voice. And it's there are a lot of introverted folks in the security and compliance and ethics and privacy worlds.
Yeah, and on top of that, one of the other things that we wanted to do was create accessibility. We are trying to make sure that people at any stage in their career can have access and be included in the dialogue. And also that you can drive your own destiny when it comes to your career. One of the challenges with development is oftentimes many people are sitting there waiting for their company to invest in them or to say that you're going to be in a leadership group, and you wait and wait and wait, and compliance is often, and information security and all of the risk professions are not at the top of the list. They're really developing their salesperson or their business leaders, etc. And so one of the things that I was always faced with when I was managing teams was, well, there are a lot of people that it would be really great to invest in, but there was no corporate budget to do it or no corporate appetite to do it. And so I wanted to find a way that people could choose to invest in themselves and develop those skills without having to wait for their corporation to come around to it, or their manager, or whomever. So this was one of the ways that I thought people would be able to have that access to development opportunities at their fingertips that they could bring with them wherever they went in their professional career.
Yeah, I know the times come. There often times come where a question will come across, and I'll post it out to various groups, and it would be really helpful to have it. One of the things I'm really most excited about is to have people across this broad set of fields in multiple jurisdictions, in multiple verticals, that I can that I can put those kind of questions out to about how would you handle this, and get a lot of perspectives back.
Right.
The other thing you mentioned that I want to dig into a little bit is that there's, especially now in the last 8 weeks, there's less and less focus by companies on the growth of the people within their organization. Now, this has been a growing trend, but I think it's exacerbated by the fact that there's so much focus on survival of companies.
Right.
That growth is largely left to the individual. And
Yeah.
so, the hope here is to give a place where individuals can get that kind of growth and access in a meaningful way. So what's up next? We've got all of that. We've got all this together. I think one of the we've sort of rounded out a suite of vehicles and mechanisms to try and engage and learn over a number of different pillars. And it's like we've mentioned the forum. There's a forum that's in place that is it's a subscription service. We're starting it with a low price. Unfortunately, we want to keep it we're not doing ads, we're not doing marketing, we're not doing data sales, so we have to cover some costs. And so we're making it a subscription service. It also helps us make sure that the people that join are committed to what they're doing. It's a low barrier to entry, but it makes sure that it stays a meaningful space for people. And this all pivots around the forum. On top of that is things like we have events planned, and Lisa, you're driving a lot of these. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the events?
I'm so excited about some of the events that we have coming up. The next one will be our compliance and risk cooler, which is basically like a drop-in virtual office hours where Dan and I will answer questions as they come up and talk about what's on our minds, what we're seeing going on in the world of compliance and risk. And we're also going to have some special guest speakers on a variety of different topics. You'll hear more about those next week during the Compliance and Risk Cooler event.
And the Compliance Risk Cooler is next Wednesday, correct?
Correct. Next Wednesday. And everybody who's here will get an invitation to that as well. And we'll be putting out information on the MentorCore website and our LinkedIn. So follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We're in all of your social channels.
So beyond the events, one of the other things that that I think Lisa and I both have done over the years is matching people. Not swipe left, swipe right matching, but finding mentors for people, finding the right pairing of characteristics, of needs of directionality and fields. And so we want to bring that here too. So part of the membership is getting the ability to identify what you need, what you want out of a mentor or out of a protege, and trying to pair people in meaningful ways and help make those really good and meaningful discussions with participants in the community. That's something that's on the near horizon, and we have some question sets we're working through to try and get people matched up appropriately. So that's coming soon. We're also looking at things beyond optional things like coaching and mastermind series. The mastermind's really cool. It's going to be a year-long cohort.
Correct. And it'll be facilitated, and there's an application process that we're working on right now, and the handbook is being worked on for that as well. So we are very, very excited about this mastermind and also about the coaching and development. With the coaching and development, it's all certified coaches that can help you grow and develop your career or make difficult decisions. Right now, I'll tell you, I've talked to so many people who are in transition. And over the past year, I've had lots and lots of conversations as people pivot their careers, make different decisions. Right now, I know Dan and I, we've been talking a lot about really amazing people that because of the times and all of the crisis that are going on, really are at a turning point in their career where they are deciding maybe compliance and risk isn't for me, or I want to go down a different path, or my company's just furloughed 75% of their employees, and I was one of the unlucky ones that was in that group. So I think that there are a lot of people who would really benefit from being able to connect with others as they're navigating those transitions, either from a coaching perspective or from a mentoring perspective. So really, this community isn't just for people who are in-house or who are consulting or have a job right now. It's for people in every part of the path, people who want to enter in, who want to get to the C-suite, who want to be on boards. This is a place for all of us.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm actually really, in retrospect, I'm really even more glad about the question that came in earlier about the entry level. Both questions focused on entry level, because I think that's a really important space. I know that we are way short on numbers of people, and we want to do whatever we can to help people make their way into the field. It's not always easy. It's not always kind, but we really want to help make that happen, both because we need to see those people in the field, but also because we want to see people be successful.
Well, and I will say that there's a lot of overlap between compliance, ethics, privacy, risk, information security, IT, et cetera, audits. And what I'm seeing more and more is that different people are being slotted with different responsibilities in their organizations. Oftentimes, you'll get a chief compliance officer who ends up being an enterprise risk chair, or a information security professional who also ends up being their head of privacy, and vice versa. So I'm seeing, right now, like every 3 to 5 years, people are making pretty significant shifts or adding on significant responsibilities that they may not have had exposure to before. So we really need to get to a point where we can help each other very quickly get up to speed in these different areas and make those transitions go as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So mentorcore.biz, mentorcore.biz is the site. There's more info there. You can register there as well. Like I said before, no ads or sponsors. So we're working on a membership model, but we want to grow the community. So we're starting out at a reduced rate to get things going. And we want to know what you think. Really interested in feedback. So you can get in touch with us at info@mentorcore.biz. Or if you join, when you join, there is a site feedback forum on the community where we really do want to hear thoughts and ways to grow. This is something we want to grow based on what the community needs, and go from there. And I was just asked to provide the URL again, so I will put it into the chat, mentorcore.biz. There you go. And if you're watching this on on demand, we'll make sure that it's available visibly for you somewhere here. But please do provide the feedback. Career growth and development are lifelong activities. This isn't something that ever really stops. So thanks for joining us today. If things like building community and supporting growth and development in our amazing fields are part of what you espouse, we'd love for you to join us on this journey. Thanks, Lisa. It was a great chat. I really appreciate it. It's great to kick it off this way.
Yes, it's very exciting after so many months of work.
Yeah.
I think we have a great journey ahead of us. I hope people join us for it.
Yeah, me too. If there's any other questions in the chat, please feel free to put them in and we can answer them offline. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And please visit us, mentorcore.biz, mentorcore.biz. Thanks and have a great day.